I'm pleased to welcome to the stage our next speaker, Karen Brooks. Many of you might know her as the food editor and critic for Portland Monthly magazine. And she's also the author of the new book about Portland's food scene called The Mighty Gastropolis. She has lived in Portland for over 30 years and has watched it grow from a sleepy West Coast town into the globally recognized culinary powerhouse that it is today. She's shared her sharp wit and food critiques in Willamette Week and the Oregonian newspaper before she appeared on Portland Monthly's literary menu. How did Portland achieve such an enviable status in the culinary world? Karen will share with us some of Portland's secrets with an eye towards the lessons that other destinations and businesses can apply in their own branding efforts. And throughout her career, Karen has written a range of books on food and pop culture that together have sold about 700,000 copies. Please help me welcome Karen Brooks for her talk, Portland, the Mighty Gastropolis.
Good afternoon. When I first came to Portland, the first thing that I noticed was there was no regional cuisine here, no defining dishes, no iconic recipes whose secrets you take to the grave. It was this strange land where everyone seemed to have three identities, but they were eating the best ingredients on the planet. The top restaurant was a high-flying, tumble-down, don't call us French restaurant that was run by a Harvard graduate who dressed like a homeless guy. I knew I had to write about this place. And in 1993, I wrote a book called Cuisine of the Rain, and it was about the first wave of pioneers who blazed the trail for the farm-to-table future in the home of James Beard. The introduction of the book was called The New Oregon Eating Experience, and it was farm-fresh, and it was polished and delicious. But for much of my career, Portland restaurants were kind of laughably bad. It was kind of like Saturday Night Live parodies of restaurants. This was the real Portlandia, complete with the sound of dishes crashing to the floor while you were eating. Flash forward to 2013. And an irreverent food scene is exploding out of every corner of the city. Portland is a world of food truck living and ethical dreaming and nights of animal fever, starring zany cooks and the diners willing to follow them anywhere. The food world has a crush on Portland, Oregon. Ruth Reichel calls it the crucible of new American cooking. Saveur magazine calls it the great new food city. So how did this happen? Well, it didn't happen overnight. 10 years ago, I noticed something that was new and important. A group of young talent who had walked away from the conventional restaurant world to rethink great food on their own terms. Their candlelit dens and their supper clubs didn't look anything like what you found in a white table restaurant. I called it the next wave, and I noted they're charting the course for a new frontier. And a crazy generation of idealists joined them. With unprecedented spunk over the next 5 years, a people's army of meat slayers and lard lovers and sugar wizards and picklers and butchers and baristas and bartenders rose to create a food scene unlike any other. They did it against the odds and sometimes the boundaries of sanity. A place called Stumptown defied the gods of gastronomy. Portland cooks up concepts that would never come out of a corporate kitchen. There's coffee with a point of view, a donut shop where you can get a bacon maple bar and a marriage certificate. People try the wackiest things here, but when they stick, they can stick big. Portland drives on believing that you can make something happen for almost nothing. And that forces people to think differently. I mean, 15 years ago, no one thought about interesting things happening in a parking lot. Portland's not even like a crumb at the table of the conversation on fine dining, but it's leading a different conversation about evangelical sourcing in our backyard and indifference to pedigree. Portland cooks are shattering conventions and they're galvanizing communities around them. And they're leading us to better conclusions and better ways of eating and living. Can this recipe be duplicated elsewhere or even here? I think the core of it can. And I want to share that idea, but first I want to say a few things about Portland. By luck and by good planning, we do have access to the best farmlands and forests. I mean, this is the end of the rainbow. A world-class farmers market sits right in downtown. In this democracy of eating, we all get the same great stuff. I can fight it out with Chef Naomi Pomeroy for the best tomatoes of the day, and may the best woman win. What we don't have here is money. Economic growth since World War II has been pretty paltry. And of course, we're soaked to the bone much of the year. So in Portland, you have to create your own sunshine. You've got to make your own shot. And the simple fact is this: people are here because they want to be here. So we've grown a food culture that's different. It's small scale and willfully eccentric and open to just about anything. A new generation has shown us that great ideas can be found anywhere, even in the back of a truck. But Portland reminds us not just what tastes good in our stomachs, but what are we looking for in our hearts these days? And that's craft, and it's connection, and it's community. And I want to share a taste of these today in a kind of virtual meal, Portland style. So in Portland, everything begins with craft and good coffee. Bike-riding micro-roaster Joel Domries holds court every day at Courier Coffee Roasters downtown. At Courier, you've just entered a world in which there is no cash register. Money is exchanged by hand and clamped on a clipboard. Joel writes his commitment on every bag of beans, noting the varietal, the farm, the port of arrival, the roasting day, and for good measure, his cell phone number. Recently, he became obsessed with the cannelé, a French pastry that would make even the pros tremble. And for hours a day, he's in there and he's scraping vanilla beans with his Swiss Army knife and rocketing up a ladder to get flour and kneeling on the ground to turn the trays every 5 minutes on his oven, which is stashed beneath the counter, stopping only to flip vinyl records on his turntable. For most bakers, the grail of the cannelé is unachievable. For Joel, it's no challenge at all. It's just part of the fun journey that flows through his self-made world. For all of this effort, he makes only 18 cannelé a day. And the haul for his effort is $36. But the return on his investment is simply the purest form of joy. ROI in Portland means return on inventiveness. I don't look at labor cost, he says. This is my life. All it costs me is my vigilance. Now for our vegetables, let's have a taste of connection. Every week I head to the farmer's market to hunt down purple carrots with crazy white stripes marching through their centers. It's one of 14 rare heirloom varieties from Prairie Creek Farm in Joseph. And every weekend, for as long as anyone can remember, farmer Gene Teal has made the 600-mile trek to the Portland Farmers Market. You don't have to say, are these carrots organic? You know, you just look at these babies and the line between dirt and jewels is suddenly very thin. The beauty here is trust. Food is trust. Trust is a handshake. Trust is one man so deeply connected to what he's yanked out of the ground that he's willing to travel 6 hours a day, stand on concrete all day long, even in his late 70s, because he loves the idea that we're eating his food. I once asked him, Gene, why are your carrots so good? And he looked at me and said, because I talk to them. So I want to finish with a sweet idea, community. How many of us know someone who at age 30 dropped everything to pursue a dream of making chocolates? This is a very Portland story. David Briggs rents the back room of a cult cheese sandwich shops. His chocolates have reimagined the sweet zone with the likes of Parmesan cheese and heritage pigs. One taste is like to discover the missing link. But his workspace is anything but Willy Wonka's factory. But it shows what happens when someone else is willing to share their space and possibility for $200 rent a month. And once those doors were open, these chocolates, these chocolates de David, as he calls them, were suddenly everywhere. They were in bars and tea shops and on dessert trays in prominent restaurants. Because that's how it works here. Everyone celebrates and champions each other. Zero-sum game does not apply in Portland. So if you remember one thing about these ideas that we've shared today, it's these 3 C's. It's craft, and it's connection, and it's community. The letter C stands at the center of the new food culture. It's coffee, it's carrots, it's chocolate, it's collaboration, it's commitment, it's creativity, it's craft, it's connection, it's community. If you put these 3 things together in Portland style, you're cooking. Thank you.
Mighty Gastropolis. All right. Who has a mighty question? Or a minor question? Could be a medium one, somewhere in between tiny and gigantic. Gastronomic. I could ask you about gluten. Oh, all right. Anybody else, since you've already asked a couple of questions? Somebody who hasn't asked a question? And then back to you. Is Michelle? All right, can we get the microphone over there to the middle? Sorry. Sorry, is there some confusion about, can I have hands raised very high? Okay, whoa, 3, all right. In the checkers, behind the checkers, and then in the blue. Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
Sold.
I'm not sure this is working. So do you think Portland...
Can you use the mic, please?
Okay.
Thanks.
Do you think that Portland is ever going to be able to support a high-end kind of fine dining? Are we headed in that direction, or is that just not going to happen here?
I think it would depend what you would call fine dining. I don't think we're going to have French laundries here. I'm not sure that we can support those kinds of dreams, but I kind of hope, and I think it happens to different degrees, that we'll reimagine fine dining. I think that's what Portland does. And I think that's how Portland is giving places like New York and Los Angeles something to chew on. Le Pigeon, in its way, it's fine dining, but it feels like kind of an underground dinner party with food, you almost could never imagine, but there's the chef just kind of handing it to you with a you guys familiarity.
Great. Go ahead and to the back there, and then I see you've got my eye on you.
Hello, Karen. My name's Matthew. I think you're awesome.
Thank you.
I want to ask a question that I don't hear being asked very often. I think it should be asked more, and that's in the midst of this new food revolution, how can we transform foodies into real food revolutionaries? How can we get people more excited about things like the food bill and the preservation of the family farm? And how do you see media personalities like yourself playing a role in that?
Did you get all of those questions, Karen?
I think so. You mean, how do we get people who love food and love supporting restaurants and going to the markets, how do we get them more interested in the politics of food, the future of food? Is that what you're answering? What you're asking? You could answer it too if you want. I mean, it's a good question. I'm not sure that I have a simple answer to that. I think part of it is creating forums. I think Feast was a good example in September about creating, getting a lot of people together, having talks, having discussions. It's hard to sort of boil it down to a simple answer. I would say for me, myself, I mean, I'm a food critic and kind of a cultural observer, and so it's hard for me to also write and report on those issues, but Portland is a creative place, and I think maybe it's people like yourself throwing salons. Do it Portland style. You have an idea of something that's important to talk about, a food bill. Let's do it. Let's get people, get a restaurant involved. The chefs are amazing here. Say, let's throw down a supper club night to talk about this idea. I mean, I think the people engaged in the education and the politics of food have to show the kind of creativity and maybe the creative thinking that the restaurants and the food carts are showing. Does that make sense?
Okay, great. And, communicate with your local, public radio station, too. There might be some good ideas for talk shows or news or stories. You don't know until you, reach out. Go ahead.
I have 2 restaurant questions for you. So, favorite all-time restaurant in Portland that if someone came and visited you, you would take them to? And your opinion, the best up-and-coming restaurant that's, just come on the scene in the past couple years?
Always the question that I fear. And having just written a book about and profiled a number of cooks in Portland, they're all my children. I love them all. Often my favorite place is whatever I'm writing about. It depends a little bit what you're looking for, but Le Pigeon for sure. I mean, I do think the guy is a flavor genius. And it's such a Portland experience with the communal tables and the vibe and the creativity. You'll never forget it. Pak Pak, of course, is, it's this magical indoor-outdoor world with, militant Thai street food, Cambodian rock music. And, this is the guy, the wingmeister who literally built a chicken shack in his front yard and now rules the roost in New York. And, he sort of changed the Thai food conversation, really making people aware of, the great repertoire of dishes in Thailand. So bottom line, those 2.
What about the up-and-coming, right? That was the second question, the up-and-coming restaurant?
Thank you. Up-and-coming, I really like Ox, which kind of mashes up Argentinian barbecue and Portland bravado. It's a kind of nights of gonzo gaucho eating.
Thank you.
Okay, you want to pass that? Just, Michelle, did you want to go ahead and ask your question? And then we'll take one more after you.
Just anecdotally, I wondered if you had a really good story to share, somebody who tried something new and it was amazing for the food scene here, or somebody who failed disastrously and that you experienced or wrote about?
I think she's asking for dirt.
Yeah. Okay, let me just see if I understand the question. That somebody tried something and it failed.
Well, just in your experience, if you had a story that you always like to tell about a restaurant or a chef,
Seriously, like a story of catastrophe, perhaps, or great success.
catastrophe or something that got something rolling in Portland that made it, kind of Gastropolis.
Oh gosh, I'm
Well,
feeling.
The Pock example is kind of, I don't know,
Yeah,
to
yeah.
me that fits the latter bill, but you.
Right. I mean, Portland, and I think one of the themes that runs through my book is, it's about obsessive thinking, but it's also perseverance. I mean, about people, doing things, against the odds and the boundaries of sanity. Pock is the great example, the guy who essentially did everything like wrong, leveraging his credit cards, opening with no operating funds, on a opening on Division Street in the front yard. I mean, a place where, to me, I got to check my horoscope before I cross the street on Division. I mean, just in the most unlikely place. Like, how did this guy become, sort of the future thinking of Thai food? So I don't know that it's like one disaster story. As I said, certainly, for many years, I think there was a lot of really laughably bad restaurants here. So yeah, I think what's more interesting about Portland, it's this culture of perseverance. It's the guy from Taste Bud who's bringing, you can find him down at the farmer's market, who's bringing extreme seasonality to bagels, while he's tending a hand-forged oven that he hauls around in the back of his truck, often standing out in the rain. It kind of goes back to what I was saying about Courier Coffee Shop. I mean, this is a guy with his Swiss Army knives, tackling one of the great, French pastries, which is kind of like, whoa, this is awesome, I love this. And against the odds, in his little oven, under the counter, he's making an amazing cannoli. And so to me, that's, sort of the heart and, the quirky heart of Portland and what makes it a fascinating place.
And you can try to pump Karen Brooks for more dirt or whatever you like after our speaker series is over and when we adjourn to the Cascadian Cuisine reception. She'll be selling and signing books out in the lobby, right out in the lobby. Is that right, Eric?
Yes.
Yes.
And
And the last question goes to Eric Wolf.
Put a quick plug in for Karen's book. It is an amazing piece, really. She gave me an advance copy, and I couldn't stop reading it until it was done. It was my best friend on a recent trip to Europe. I read the whole thing before I landed in Europe, and I think Karen it's kind of like how our chefs are, where they just kind of intuit what to do with certain ingredients and textures and experiences, and it comes into this amazing thing. She did that with words, and it's easy for Travel Portland and Travel Oregon and our organization to market what Portland does great, but she explains how we got to great, and it's just an amazing compendium of what's happened in the past 10, 15 years in the city and how we got there. So I know she's selling the books and signing them in the lobby. I really encourage you. I think if there's one book, if you really wanted to understand how Portland got to where we are, this is the book. And I know that there's questions in the back too, so maybe we can ask those at the reception.
At the reception, exactly,
Yes.
to try to stay on track.
Right.
So
Thank you.
Please
Thank
join
you.
me in thanking Karen Brooks.
Thank you all so much. Please come by and say hello.